You close the front door, you get in the car or walk down the street. And somewhere in the back of your mind, on almost every single day you've ever left your dog behind, the same thought surfaces. Do they miss me? You wonder what they do when you're gone. Whether they go straight to sleep and barely notice. Whether they wait by the door the whole time. Whether there's something happening in their brain, some sense of absence, some experience of you being gone. Or whether the whole question is a projection, a human emotion we assign to creatures who are simply waiting for the next good thing, without any real awareness of what's in between. For a long time, the honest answer was, we don't really know. The inner lives of animals are difficult to study, and what looks like missing could just be behavioral change with no emotional content behind it. But that's no longer where the science sits. Over the past 2 decades, researchers studying dog cognition, animal attachment, and behavioral neuroscience have produced findings that are not ambiguous. Dogs don't just respond to your absence in behavioral terms. They respond to it physiologically, neurologically, and emotionally, in ways that match, closer than most people expect, what we mean when we use the word miss. Here is what the science actually says. The attachment is real, and it's been measured. The starting point for understanding whether dogs miss their owners is understanding the nature of the bond between them. In the 1970s, developmental psychologist Mary Ainsworth developed a test called the strange situation, a structured protocol for studying attachment in human infants. The test places a child in an unfamiliar room with their caregiver, introduces a stranger, and then has the caregiver leave and return. The child's behavior during separation and reunion is observed and coded for attachment security. Securely attached children use the caregiver as a safe base, show distress when they leave, and are comforted when they return. In the 1990s and 2000s, researchers adapted this protocol for dogs. They placed dogs in an unfamiliar room with their owner, introduced a stranger, and had the owner leave the room. The results were remarkably consistent. Most dogs show clear signs of secure attachment. They use their owner as a safe base from which to explore. They show behavioral distress, increased vocalization, changed movement patterns, more time near the door, when the owner leaves. And they show notably different, more enthusiastic, more prolonged greeting behavior when the owner returns, compared to when a stranger returns. The dogs in these studies weren't performing for observers. The patterns that emerged from coding their behavior matched, structure for structure. The patterns researchers had spent decades documenting in human infants. The attachment system, the neurological and behavioral program that makes a being register and respond to the presence and absence of a specific other, is operating in dogs in relationship to their owners. So when you leave, something in your dog's brain is not neutral about it. The bond is real, and it has a physiology. 2. Their stress hormones rise when you leave. Behavior can be interpreted in multiple ways. A dog who paces near the door might be anxious about the absence of their owner, or they might just be bored, or responding to external sounds, or doing something that has been accidentally reinforced over time. Behavior alone doesn't confirm internal experience. But cortisol is harder to argue with. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone, the one that rises in response to perceived threat, physical challenge, and psychological distress. It is produced by the same physiological systems in dogs and humans. And it can be measured in urine samples and, more recently, in saliva. Researchers have collected cortisol samples from dogs before, during, and after separation from their owners in controlled conditions. The pattern they find, in study after study, is consistent. cortisol levels increase when the owner leaves and remain elevated during the separation period. In dogs with more severe separation anxiety, the elevation is sharper and more sustained. In more securely attached dogs with no clinical anxiety, the elevation is still present, though more moderate. When the owner returns, cortisol levels begin to fall. The stress response ends. The body interprets the return as the resolution of the stressor. This is not behavioral data that could be explained by boredom or routine disruption. This is a physiological stress response, a hormonal change that the dog's body produces in response to something it reads as a genuine stressor. That stressor is your absence. Your dog's body registers losing you as a source of stress, in the same biological sense that an injury or a threat is a source of stress. That is, in the most precise biological sense available to us, what missing looks like. 3. They can tell how long you've been gone. One of the most interesting questions in dog cognition is whether dogs have any sense of time passing, and, if so, whether they can distinguish between different lengths of separation. The common assumption is that dogs live entirely in the present moment, that an hour and a day are the same to them, that 5 minutes and 8 hours register identically. This is comforting in a certain way. It means they don't experience a long day as meaningfully longer than a short errand. But it turns out not to be completely accurate. Researchers have compared dog greeting behavior after different lengths of separation, 30 minutes versus 2 hours, for example. The results show that dogs greet their owners more intensely and for longer after extended separations than after brief ones. They sniff more, maintain closer contact for longer, and show more excited vocalizations following longer absences. The conclusion drawn from this is that dogs have some sense of time duration. They are not perfectly insensitive to how long the separation has been. The mechanism behind this is likely a combination of internal circadian rhythms, which track general time-of-day patterns, and the gradual fading of sensory information about you, particularly your scent, which decreases in intensity as the hours pass. This doesn't mean your dog experiences the subjective duration of a long day at work the way you do, but it does mean they're not indifferent to how long you've been gone. The longer you've been away, the stronger the signal that the reunion produces. And that graded response, bigger reaction to longer absence, is one of the clearest behavioral signatures of genuine missing. 4. Your scent activates reward circuits in their brain. One of the most striking findings in recent dog cognition research comes not from behavioral observation, but from neuroimaging. Using training protocols that allow dogs to stay still inside fMRI scanners, researchers have been able to observe which parts of the dog brain activate in response to different stimuli. In one study, dogs were presented with 5 different scents: their own scent, the scent of a familiar dog from their household, the scent of a stranger dog, the scent of a familiar human who was not their primary owner, and the scent of their primary owner. Of all the scents tested, the scent of the primary owner produced the strongest activation of the caudate nucleus, a region of the brain associated with positive emotions, reward anticipation, and attachment in mammals, including humans. The owner's scent was neurologically distinct from all other stimuli tested. It was not just familiar. It was coded as something positive, something the dog's brain specifically anticipates and responds to. When you leave your home, your scent is still present in the environment for some time, but it fades. Your dog experiences the diminishing of that signal, the thing that their brain has coded as rewarding, as home, as safe, over the hours of your absence. And when you return, that signal is suddenly restored at full intensity. The caudate nucleus lights up. The reward system activates. That is, in neurological terms, why your dog goes a little crazy when you come back. It's not just excitement. It's the return of something their brain was wired to want in the first place. 5. Dogs with separation anxiety experience a different level of this entirely. Everything described so far applies to most dogs. Moderate stress responses, attachment behaviors, elevated cortisol during separation. These are normal features of a healthy dog-human bond. They do not indicate a problem. Separation anxiety is something more specific and more severe. A dog with separation anxiety doesn't experience your absence as mildly stressful. They experience it as a crisis. And the behaviors that follow, destructive chewing, relentless vocalization, self-injury, loss of bladder or bowel control, inability to settle at any point during the absence, are not behavioral problems in the conventional sense. They are panic responses. The neurological difference between a securely attached dog who misses you and a dog with clinical separation anxiety is meaningful. The former has a stress response that is elevated during your absence and returns to baseline when you're home. The latter has a stress response that spikes to levels associated with acute panic and may not fully resolve even after your return. These dogs are not being dramatic or difficult. They are experiencing a level of distress that, if it occurred in a human, we would recognize immediately as a mental health crisis. Managing separation anxiety requires more than most owners attempt on their own. Graduated departure training, teaching the dog to tolerate your absence in tiny, incrementally increasing doses, is the behavioral foundation. But for many dogs, that alone is not sufficient. Veterinary support, including medications that reduce the anxiety response enough to make behavioral training accessible, is often a necessary component. If your dog's behavior during your absence sounds like what's described here, a veterinary behaviorist is the right starting point. What this science actually changes about how you leave and come home. Understanding that your dog genuinely misses you, that their stress hormones rise, their brain registers the absence of something it codes as rewarding, their attachment system activates, has practical implications for how you structure the moments around leaving and returning. On departures, the most common instinct is to make a long goodbye, to spend several minutes reassuring the dog, speaking in an apologetic tone, making the moment emotionally heavy. The intention is kindness. The effect is often the opposite. A drawn-out, emotionally elevated departure amplifies the dog's awareness that something significant is happening, and it sets a tone of high anxiety for the separation that follows. A brief, calm, matter-of-fact goodbye reduces that spike. It communicates, "This is normal. I do this regularly. I come back. Everything is fine." That is more useful to your dog than the emotional scene, however well-intentioned, on arrivals. Similarly, an extremely high-energy return, the frenzied greeting, the loud voice, the immediate rough play, can inadvertently reinforce the idea that your return is an exceptional, rare event, which implies that your absence was exceptional and concerning. A warm but measured greeting, enthusiastic but not frantic, taking 30 seconds to settle before engaging fully, allows the dog's stress response to come down gradually rather than converting it directly into hyperarousal. What helps most during the time you're away is not specific to the departure or arrival. It's what you've built into the absence itself. Physical and mental enrichment. A stuffed frozen food toy that takes time to work through. A snuffle mat. A window with something to observe. A consistent routine that tells the dog's internal clock roughly when you'll return. And over time, the accumulated experience of "you always come back," which is its own kind of reassurance, accumulated through hundreds of reunions, written into their behavioral history. Your dog misses you when you leave. The science is unambiguous about that. But dogs who have built up a secure record of separations and reunions, who have learned through experience that the absence always ends, that you always return, that the time in between is manageable, carry that record with them. And it makes the missing easier to bear. Subscribe if you want to keep understanding what goes on inside your dog's mind and how to support them in the ways that actually matter.